Hello there, and thank you for watching. It is with great pleasure that we have here with us Mr. Beng Goldstein. Renowned author and academic, Ben is responsible for the worldwide successful Framework series, as well as a number of titles and articles in the field of ELT. Ben is here with us today to talk about his brand new series, The Big Picture. Hello, Ben.
Hi there, Carlos.
How are you?
Okay.
First of all, why is this series called The Big Picture?
That was a good question. I think it's a very catchy title, The Big Picture, and I think it's a very meaningful one at the same time, because we're referring to the big picture here literally, in the sense that the course is very much about images. It's about the use of images, and it's about getting students engaged actively with interpreting images and not just passively describing them. Really, I think very often in ELT, images are not exploited sufficiently. And in the big picture, the images have a much more active role, particularly in the opening spread of each unit, which the idea is that the students engage with these images and they find some kind of personal contact with these images, that they respond affectively to the images, and that very often the image is, as I said, therefore the starting point for the task, or the launch pad for a task. And this is very different, I think, to other books. And so that's the first, let's say, literal meaning of the big picture. But then metaphorically as well, the expression the big picture, means to see things in a global perspective, in a broader perspective. And so we want to promote the idea of seeing English in this wider context, so the students see that the language work and the skills work that they're involved in leads to a goal. And so that I think the big picture is a goals-based course in that sense, because the language and skills work culminates in a final task and in a functional language page, which brings together the work they've done in a unit. Therefore, the students can see they can see that they're achieving a specific goal related to the language work that they've done in the previous pages. So I think that's also the big picture.
It's a big picture of the language itself.
They're seeing the big picture. They're seeing language in a broader context, in a wider perspective, seeing why they need to use this language, not just learning it for the sake of it.
All right. And what would you say are the major theories, the underlying principles of the series, of the big picture?
Well, first of all, definitely this idea, as I said, of images doing the talking, visual literacy. We're looking at here, I think the students today, young people today, communicate through images. They're very visually aware, and they use images as a tool for communication, certainly the way I didn't when I was growing up. So I think we need to embrace that trend, and the whole digital context in which students now communicate as well. I think we need to bear that in mind. So I think visual literacy is very important. And as I said, I think having real-world goals is an underlying principle of the course. That students see that there's a reason, as I said before, that there's a reason to be looking at this language and looking at these skills work. That there's an outcome there.
Okay, sounds very interesting. Well, you know that you have a lot of followers, a lot of users of your previous series, Framework. For those, how would you say that the big picture is different from Framework?
Well, it is different, but at the same time, there are some similarities, and we've developed on some of the methodological trends that we started out with in Framework. I think the fact of English is an international language and showing world culture, that was prevalent, that was there in Framework, and we've continued with that. The whole idea of spoken language, focusing on high-frequency spoken language and collocation, is also, again, in the big picture. So there are some things that have followed, but there are some things that we've emphasize more. One of them is learning strategies, learning to learn. This was visible in Framework, but in the workbook component. Here we've made it, we've put it into the student book, so we want students to see that the importance of taking responsibility for their own learning. And this is in the Bring It Together section, which is at the end of each of the review pages after each three units, so the students can see their progress in terms of what they can do after looking at 3 units, for example, and also giving them time to reflect on the strategies that they might use in learning. The other difference between the big picture and framework, as I said, is this idea of the visual being even more important. And as I said before, this idea of outcomes, learning outcomes. The design of the unit is different to framework. And the fact that there's a functional language page, a whole page on functional language, and a whole page devoted to a final speaking and writing task is also very different to how framework was laid out. So I think there are some things which we've developed and from framework, some methodological trends that we've followed and emphasised more, and other things which are coming to the forefront that we hadn't considered before, to give it a different identity.
Okay. Well, you know, and we all know that at this moment we're surfing the crest of a technological wave.
Yeah,
right?
very much so.
Yeah, and we don't know what's going to come in the future and the consequences for English language teaching and learning. But in that sense, how will the big picture surf this wave?
Well, that's a very important question. These days we have to consider the role of technology in our students' lives and in the classroom as well. I think with the learning platform that the big picture has, I think that the most exciting departure is in fact the possibility for students to work outside the classroom using technology. So there will be a digital book, there will be a digital version of the big picture that teachers can use with smartboards and so on in the classroom, and that's fine, and I think that's needed. But I think the really exciting element is getting students to interact online outside the classroom, in the forum of the VLE, the virtual learning environment, and in the library. They can upload images, they can upload texts. The teacher can set additional related tasks to what they see in the book itself, and students can interact there formally. The teacher can track their progress and see that interaction as part of, let's say, part of the overall evaluation. They could include it as to motivate the students to interact, and then they can also interact informally through a blog that we're going to include in the website with other big picture users all over the world. So I see that a very exciting departure, that students can interact within their classroom with their teacher in a more formal context, and at the same time can interact more informally with other users of the big picture. And I think all of that makes the face-to-face classroom time more valuable. So I see that the role of technology is saving time for the teacher, really, and giving the students an opportunity to interact that they wouldn't have had before. And this makes the face-to-face contact more important.
Okay. So now, as we're coming to an end, if you could summarize, you already gave us an overview of the series and all that, but if you could summarize in a few words, what is the big picture of the big picture?
Okay.
What would you say?
Well, I think highly visual. Yeah. The idea is, as I said before, students are communicating visually now through Facebook, through other digital tools, and so on. So we need to embrace that new visual literacy. So visual and real life and relevant international contexts with striking images. I think something like that would be the overriding theme, the underlying principle of the big picture. Dynamic visuals that allow students to see a bigger picture of English in the world today, seeing English in real-world contexts and real-world aims.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Beng Goldstein.
Thanks very much, Carlos.
And if you would like to have any more information about this brand new series, The Big Picture, please contact one of our consultants or call us in our toll-free number. Thank you very much.
Thanks.